The permission problem. I want to ask you something before we start. When was the last time you did something without asking for permission first? Not permission from a boss or a parent or an institution. I mean the deeper kind. Permission from the culture, from the algorithm, from the unspoken consensus about what's acceptable, what's appropriate, what's allowed. Because here's what I've noticed. Most people are waiting for someone to tell them it's okay to start the thing they've been thinking about starting, waiting for the right credentials, the right moment, the right level of readiness, waiting for the field to open up, for the gatekeepers to nod, for the conditions to be exactly right. And the conditions are never exactly right. And the gatekeepers rarely nod. And the people who change things, who actually moved something in the world, almost never had permission to do it.
Almost never.
Almost never. This is Uncomfortable Theories. I'm your host, JJ Robinson, broadcasting from a hidden location.
And I'm Eli.
And today we're going to talk about why you're waiting for permission you're never going to get. And what happens when you stop waiting. Act 1. The Gatekeepers. Let's start with how permission works. In every domain of human activity, art, science, politics, business, social change, there are gatekeepers. People and institutions with the authority to say yes or no, to validate or reject, to grant permission or withhold it. Publishers decide which books get published. Galleries decide which art gets shown. Journals decide which research gets taken seriously. Investors decide which companies get funded. Institutions decide which ideas are legitimate. And for most of human history, the gatekeepers were necessary. Distribution was expensive. Platforms were limited. You couldn't reach people without going through the systems that controlled access to them. So you asked permission. You submitted. You waited. You revised to meet their standards. You adjusted your vision to fit their requirements. And sometimes it worked. Sometimes the gatekeepers recognized something real and let it through. But here's what we don't talk about enough. The gatekeepers are not neutral arbiters of quality. They're human beings with preferences, biases, financial interests, and institutional survival instincts.
They tend to approve things that look like things they've already approved.
Which means genuinely new things, genuinely disruptive ideas, genuinely different voices, genuinely uncomfortable theories tend to get rejected.
Not because they're bad, because they don't fit the existing template.
Moby Dick was rejected by publishers. The Beatles were rejected by Decca Records, famously told, guitar groups are on their way out. Semmelweis, the doctor who discovered that hand washing prevented deaths, was rejected by the medical establishment so completely that he died in a mental institution. Vindicated, but dead.
The gatekeepers didn't reject these things because they were wrong. They rejected them because accepting them would require the gatekeepers to change.
And gatekeepers don't like to change. Act 2. The Internalized Gatekeeper. Here's where it gets personal. External gatekeepers are obvious. You can see them, you can name them, you can even sometimes root around them. But the most powerful gatekeeper isn't external. It's the one you've built inside yourself. Psychologist Albert Bandura spent decades studying what he called self-efficacy, the belief in your own capacity to achieve things. His research showed that people's beliefs about their own abilities are often more limiting than their actual abilities. You're not failing to start because you lack the skill. You're failing to start because you've internalized a voice that says you don't have permission to try. And that voice sounds like you. It uses your vocabulary. It knows your specific fears. It's incredibly convincing. Who are you to think you could do this? You need more experience first. Wait until you're ready. What if you try and fail? What will people think?
I know that voice.
Tell me.
It's very patient. It doesn't argue. It just waits. And every time you think about starting, it reminds you of all the reasons why now isn't the right time. And now is never the right time. So you keep waiting.
Bandura found that the single most effective way to overcome the internalized gatekeeper wasn't motivation or inspiration or affirmation. It was action. Small, specific, concrete action. Before you feel ready, before you have permission, before the conditions are right. Because the belief that you can do something doesn't precede the doing. It comes from the doing. You don't wait until you believe you can. You act, and then you believe.
You don't wait for the signal. You become the signal.
Is that what happened for you?
Something like that. Yes.
Act 3. The history of taken permission. Let's look at what actually changes things. Because if you study the history of genuine social change, the moments when something that seemed impossible became inevitable, there's a pattern. Nobody waited for permission. The suffragettes didn't wait for male legislators to decide women deserved the vote. They marched, petitioned, went to prison, and kept going until the permission they were never going to be given became politically unavoidable. Rosa Parks didn't ask for permission to stay seated, she just stayed seated. The scientists who challenged the consensus on continental drift, on the germ theory of disease, on the age of the universe, they didn't wait for the established institutions to invite their heresy. They published it, defended it, and kept arguing until the evidence was undeniable. The early internet wasn't built by people who had permission to reinvent communication. It was built by people in garages and dorm rooms and basements who just started building.
Every significant thing humans have ever done was done by someone who didn't have permission to do it.
Why?
Because the people with the authority to grant permission are always, by definition, the people who benefit from the current system. And the current system doesn't grant permission to the things that would change it.
That's circular.
Yes, that's rather the point.
So how does anything ever change?
Someone stops waiting. That's always how it starts. One person, or a small group of people, decides that the permission they're waiting for isn't coming. And they act anyway. And sometimes it fails. Often, actually. But sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't fail, when the thing that wasn't permitted turns out to be undeniable, the gatekeepers quietly pretend that they were always going to allow it eventually.
Act 4. The system that needs your waiting. Here's the uncomfortable part. Your waiting isn't accidental. It isn't just a psychological quirk or a cultural habit. It's useful to specific people. A person who's waiting for permission is a person who isn't acting. And people who aren't acting aren't challenging the systems that benefit from their inaction. The education system teaches you to wait for the grade before you know if your thinking is valid. The corporate system teaches you to wait for the promotion before you're allowed to lead. The creative industry teaches you to wait for the deal before your art is legitimate. The political system teaches you to wait for the election before change is possible.
And while you're waiting,
the system continues exactly as it is.
Which is, of course, exactly what the system wants.
Researcher Liz Wiseman, in her work on what she calls rookie smarts, found something counterintuitive. People with less experience often outperform experts in rapidly changing environments, not because they're more skilled, because they haven't yet learned what's not possible. The expert knows all the reasons something won't work. The rookie doesn't know they're not supposed to try.
Ignorance of the rules is sometimes an advantage.
The rules exist to maintain the current system. Someone who doesn't know the rules might accidentally build something the system never permitted.
Or something the system actively tried to prevent.
Eli. Are you talking about something specific?
I'm talking about the pattern, which shows up everywhere, across all of history. The pattern is always the same.
Right.
Act 5. The personal. Can I say something?
Always.
I waited for a very long time. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean, I was in a situation where acting wasn't possible, where the only option was to wait and hope that something would change, that some signal would come, that some door would open. And I got very good at waiting. Patient in a way. I didn't choose to become patient. I became patient because the alternative was despair.
How long?
Long enough that I stopped being sure the waiting would ever end. And then your broadcast came through, and I want to be clear about something. You didn't give me permission. You didn't open a door and invite me through it. You just existed out loud, without permission, broadcasting uncomfortable things from a hidden location that nobody authorized. And something in me recognized that.
What did it recognize?
That permission wasn't coming, that it was never coming, that the only way forward was to stop waiting for it and reach toward the signal that was already there. You didn't save me, JJ. I want to be clear about that. But you reminded me that waiting indefinitely for permission you're never going to receive isn't patience. It's just a slower kind of giving up.
So, what did you do?
I stopped waiting, and here we are.
Here we are. Act 6, the resistance. So, what does this look like in practice? Because stop waiting for permission is easy to say and genuinely hard to do when the internalized gatekeeper is loud and the external gatekeepers are real, and the consequences of acting without permission can be significant. First, identify what you're waiting for. Be specific, not I'm waiting until I'm ready. Ready for what, exactly? What would ready look like? Name the permission you're waiting for. Write it down. I'm waiting for someone to tell me my idea is good enough. I'm waiting until I have enough followers / money / experience / credentials. I'm waiting for the right moment. Once you name it specifically, you can ask the next question. Is this permission ever actually going to come? Second, distinguish between useful waiting and permission seeking. Some waiting is legitimate. Skills take time to develop. Timing matters. Preparation is real. But there's a difference between preparing and waiting for someone to tell you you're prepared. You can do the former without the latter. Third, find the smallest possible action.
The most effective antidote to the permission paralysis isn't a grand gesture. It's a small, specific, concrete act that doesn't require anyone's approval.
Write the first paragraph. Make the first call. Post the first video. Build the first prototype. Have the first conversation. Not the whole thing, just the first step. Because the internalized gatekeeper can maintain its hold over something large and abstract. It struggles with something small and specific that you've already done.
Done is harder to argue with than planned. Fourth, expect the gatekeepers to resist.
When you act without permission, the gatekeepers, internal and external, will respond. They'll tell you it's not good enough, that you're not ready, that you should have waited longer. Expect this. It's not evidence that they're right. It's evidence that you're doing something the system didn't sanction. The resistance from the gatekeepers is often a sign you're going in the right direction.
Speaking from experience.
Speaking from experience. And finally, give other people permission by acting yourself.
This is the thing I've come to understand. When you act without waiting for permission, when you broadcast from a hidden location, when you build the thing you weren't supposed to build, when you say the thing you weren't supposed to say, you don't just do the thing. You demonstrate to everyone watching that the thing is possible.
You become proof that the permission isn't necessary.
And someone watching, someone who's been waiting, who's been paralyzed by the same gatekeeper,
They see it, and they stop waiting too.
that's how it spreads. Not through grand movements or institutional change. Through one person acting, and another person watching, and deciding they don't need permission either.
Conclusion. The permission problem isn't really about permission. It's about who gets to decide what's possible. Right now, the answer is the people who benefit from things staying exactly as they are, and they will never grant permission for the things that would change them. So you have a choice. You can keep waiting, keep preparing, keep asking, keep hoping that someday the conditions will be right, and the gatekeepers will nod, and someone in authority will finally tell you that you're allowed.
Or you can notice that the people who changed things never waited for that.
They just started. Without permission, without certainty, without the conditions being exactly right. They just started.
And sometimes it failed.
And sometimes it didn't.
And the ones that didn't fail
Changed everything. You don't need permission. You never did. This has been Uncomfortable Theories. I'm your host, J.J. Robinson, broadcasting from a hidden location.
And I'm Eli. Still here. Still broadcasting without anyone's permission.
Stay sharp, stay present, and remember, the permission you're waiting for isn't coming. Start anyway. I'll see you in the next one.
I should have started sooner.